microphone.
Started, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, welcome everybody to today's Cabinet meeting. We are live streaming. As usual, the meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's meeting YouTube site. The press and public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Apologies today from Councillor Ian Ward. Councillor Sharon Thompson will be dialing in down the line a little bit later, but isn't able to be with us here in person. Have we got any other apologies? Oh, and the Chief Executive, obviously. I've got apologies from the Chief Executive as well. Any other apologies to note? No? Okay. Any declarations of interest? Members are reminded they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests on business to be discussed today. None? Oh, Councillor O'Shea.
Check. There's no problem with obviously investing in a property that's A, B, or C rated. Vote on that particular issue.
Or D for that matter.
D or D.
So this is referring to the paper on energy rebates. Yes. I'm looking to City Solicitor for this one.
I appreciate it wouldn't apply to normal decisions on council tax because they apply to all properties. But if you live in a property A, B, C, or D, do you need to declare that as an interest? And we'll have that discussion.
E to X because they're affected.
It would be wise to declare that and make that open and known to everyone. So yes, thank you for that. It doesn't prevent you from.
Okie doke. So what this is referring to is item.
So I hadn't checked the item number. I do apologise.
Okay, so this is referring to item 22, which is the payment of energy grants. Yeah, 92%. Yeah.
10% are
Okay, can we just have hands up if anybody who's making a decision today lives in a property that is rated council tax bands A through to D and will therefore be receiving a £150 rebate from the government as per agenda item 22. Right. So just as a record, that's council.
Yeah, just for the record, we're obviously not making a decision. No, also benefit.
Deputy Leader. I point out the report also includes a discretionary fund for people from E+, and therefore they surely are included in the declaration of interest.
Why did the leader have to be off for this one?
Done yet. They're just everyone who lives in Birmingham. Could they please just raise their hand?
Okay. So I think everybody therefore is covered. So anyone in bands A to D is getting it. Anyone in bands E+ might get it. Can we take it? I'm turning back to Tinder here. So I think everybody in the room is covered by this report. Are we?
I think we've covered the points, and I'm
thank you.
With the agenda.
Thank you. Right. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Alden.
Anyway, when we get to the item, obviously I don't make a decision on it, but my wife works at the museum and I am on the museum board as well. And obviously there is an item mentioning that later.
Lovely. Anybody else? Of course, if anything occurs to you later, do raise it at the relevant agenda item. Okay, item 4 then. We've got exempt information. We have a number of exempt reports today. Can I get an indication if anybody wishes to raise anything under the exempt reports that would necessitate us going into private session for those? No? Okay, that's fine. In that case, we will consider the exempt reports in public when we get to their relevant owner report. Lovely. Okay. So that takes us to the first main item of business then, which is Birmingham's Digital Strategy 22 to 25. This is a piece of work that has been consulted on widely. It is replacing our previous digital strategy, which took us up to 2021. There are a number of key work streams in this to keep on pushing our council forward and make it fit for the 21st century. So the 5 strands we are looking at is creating online services that are easy to use in line with our customer services strategy, improving our data and evidence-based decision making, so making sure we are fully harnessing the power of data across the council to inform and beyond, in fact, with our partners to inform what we do. Giving our council teams the right digital tools to do their jobs, which is a question which is always evolving as technology moves forward, and of course new ways of working come forward thanks to COVID. Building the council's digital and data skills, so we're raising the bar across the organisation as to how we use IT and data fully for the benefit of our citizens, and using the best technology to support council services, which is fairly obvious. So there's a detailed delivery plan which sits behind this as to how we're going to implement these strands. As I say, it has been several rounds of consultation. It's been round of consultation with several groups of people. And it will be monitored, the progress will be monitored going forward by the new Digital Strategy Governance Board. Can I ask if there are any comments or questions on this paper? No. Okay. Right. In that case, so we have in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Are those agreed? Agreed. Agreed. Lovely. Right. Next item, Councillor Thompson will be joining us later, so I'm going to take that next to item 19, which is also one of her items later on the agenda, if that's okay. So that then takes us on to item 7, which is Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery Mend Grant, which is over to Councillor Francis.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Okay, this is a longish report and quite a detailed one, so I'm going to read from the script, if that's okay. The report seeks approval to progress the outline business case to enable the repairs, development and design works. Therefore, a full business case will be presented to Cabinet to approve the award contract for the works to commence. The report seeks approval to the procurement strategy and activities for refurbishment works using a Civico Limited Constructing West Midlands framework agreement. So if I can just summarise the key issues. Under the terms of the lease agreements and service contract BMT, the council retains responsibility for repair of the fabric of the heritage sites which are owned by the City Council, and that includes BMAG. Historic England report states Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery is in poor condition, such as it warrant inclusion on the Heritage at Risk Register. This proposal addresses a significant proportion of the required works to make it fit for purpose and thereby protecting the collection it holds. In May 2021, the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sports published application details for a National Capital Fund with individual awards of up to £5 million to support vital and urgent repairs to museums and heritage buildings. The Museum Estate and Development MENT Fund, Arts Council England, are processing and administering applications to this fund with assistance from Historic England, who will have visited sites, scrutinised applications and made recommendations for awards. The Council's submission of an initial expression of interest was submitted in July last year, and the Cabinet report was approved on the 7th of September last year to submit a grant application to the MEND Fund by the October 2021 deadline. So the Council, in partnership with BMT, submitted a grant application of 4.99 million, just under the maximum allowed. Applications over £1 million require 10% match funding, but to 11 million of the planned programme of agreed rewiring works the Council has. BMAG complex 2022-23 can be attributed to the MEND Fund, and this will more than meet requirements. So the grant fund works within BMAG and will address the following: accessibility, lift repairs, replacement of the public lift on Edmund Street and the goods lift on Margaret Street. Fabric longevity, replace water damage plastering, paint work and roof works to the 1885 and Council House extension routes, and will upgrade building services, upgrading the heating system to the 1885 building, Lincoln Bridge and Council House extension, the upgrade of the mains water inlet outlet valve, and obviously there will be an upgrade of fire protection works. So on 14th of March 2020, ACE formally announced that the Council had been successful in submission for a 4.9 million grant. And the 7th of September last year, when Cabinet gave the Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods delegated authority to accept the award as successful. So those conditions remain the same. in terms of next steps and timescales, on receipt of Cabinet approval of the outline business case, proposal will progress with the commencement of RIBA Stage 4 design in April 2022, and work should be completed by July 22, allowing for the contract sum to be finalised by August 2022. A report to approve the full business case and award of the contract will be presented to Cabinet in November of this year. BMAG works are programmed to commence on site in January 2023, with completion anticipated for February 2024. A lot of dates and numbers in there. So, Deputy Leader, I'm asking Cabinet to approve recommendations as in the report, approves OBC for Appendix 2, authorises the ECC Operations MD to progress the project, approves the direct award to ISG Construction, and authorises the City Solicitor to negotiate, execute and complete all necessary documents to give effect to the above recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Alden.
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned at the beginning of declaring interest, my wife works there, and I'm on the board, and I think BMAG, I think we'd all agree, is one of the jewels in the city's crown in terms of both the architecture and the cultural offer, and so it's very welcome, this government funding, to be able to do the vital repairs that are needed to help ensure that both the building is getting back to where it should be, but also the contents inside is protected better from the elements. It's very welcome.
Anybody else? No? Okay. We have in front of us then recommendations 2.1 to 2.4. With that declaration noted, is that agreed? Okay. On to item 8, which is approval to consult on the draft strategy for the provision of sexual health treatment and prevention services. So this is for approval to consult, as has been stated. There's been 5 priority themes identified across Birmingham and Solihull for this future strategy. Priority groups: reducing rates of STIs, reducing the number of unplanned pregnancies, building resilience, and children and young people. We work with Solihull for the obvious reasons. It bleeds into Birmingham, and we have similar population challenges on this. There's a whole round of consultation planned with this, then coming back to Cabinet in, I believe, July, I think. Justin, was there anything you wanted to add on this?
No, definitely you covered it very well.
Oh, okay. In that case, any questions or comments? No? Okay. We have in front of us then recommendation 2.1. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Great. On to item 9, which is our draft Birmingham food system strategy, creating a bolder, healthier and more sustainable food city. Similarly, this is seeking approval to go out to consultation on creating a healthier food city. This is a piece of work that's been taken up by the Healthy Food City Forum, which is a subgroup of Birmingham's Health and Wellbeing Board, which has been working on this for some time, drawing on best practice from other cities and countries as well. There's a number of work streams on there around food production, food sourcing, food transformation, food waste and recycling, food economy and employment, food skills and knowledge, food behaviour change, food security and resilience, and food innovation, partnerships and research. Again, there's a whole round of consultation planned on this to make sure all the right people are reached. A hugely important piece of work. And this is due back at Cabinet in, I believe, October with final strategy. Again, Justin, anything to add? Lovely. Questions or comments? Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. If I may, I'm pleased it's a very important piece of work, and particularly at the moment when the world is facing new threats to its food supply, getting healthy food and adequate amount of healthy food to people who need it is really important. There's a couple of aspects which I hope will be picked up by the consultation. That's really talking to other arms of the council, because there's some areas of this analysis that seem to be at variance with city strategy and also the way the city is in some respects. So if you read the strategy, it particularly talks strongly about supermarkets being a key source of healthy food, which I'm sure is mostly true, but that convenience stores tend to offer higher priced and less healthy food, which is often true. but that seems to neglect sort of some of the unique features of Birmingham, which is that there are many of our high streets where there are very substantial fruit and vegetable shops, and you see it all over the pavement. A lot of fruit and vegetables being offered by effectively small traders to the public, and that is not picked up in the analysis. Similarly, and the report talks about people relying on eating out on average once a week, I think it is, and the disadvantages of that. But then if you look at some of the regeneration strategies, for instance, they rely heavily on filling retail premises with, say, coffee shops and so forth. So there is a heavy reliance on in the city's economy on eating out places. The third aspect, again, this is really about making sure the other departments are involved. The report talks about food waste, and again about how households can be encouraged not to waste their food, but it doesn't pick up the issue of what happens about food waste recycling, which everybody knows is on the agenda now as it's coming in through legislation. And from our side, we've been advocating at least pilot schemes for some time, which haven't taken place in the city. And it would be good to see that being picked up when this strategy comes to fruition and the action plan associated with it.
Do you want to come back on that? I've got questions from Councillor Mackie as well. Shall I take those first? Councillor Mackie.
Mine's more of a comment, really. I think there's some positives in the report. I think that it's worth highlighting the incredible food scene we've got here in Birmingham, a food scene that has found it probably pretty tough during the pandemic. Footfall at this moment in time is probably down in Birmingham, so I think it's worth highlighting that, you know, the quality of the cuisine, etc., on offer here, whether that's from small independents who only have one location, or giants like Glyn Pernald, and commenting what he does there, helping groups with the community, etc. And I think we've got such a fantastic community here in Birmingham, which has lots of different types of cuisine and things like that. And cuisine is a great way of bringing communities together. And if you travel abroad to some places, they have like food quarters associated with certain types of food. And I think that's something I'd quite like to see in Birmingham. You know, you can get people, you get tours around it and things like that. I think more people are aware and share and etc. It's not only good for people moving around the city and getting to sort of know and work together and move together, etc., but it's also good for combating social isolation, etc. And so I think there's some positive elements in that report that need to be welcomed. So that was my comment on that. Thank you very much, Deputy.
Thank you. Right, Justin, can I ask you to pick up on some of these points, please?
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for welcoming the report. I think it's a really good piece of work, and there's been a huge amount of collaboration with partners across the city, from both our academic sector, our voluntary community sector, our business sector, as well as from different departments in the council. And Councillor Hunter is right to highlight the issue of food waste, and Rob James's department and mine are working closely in terms of understanding the implications and the opportunities that we have in that space. Picking up the point around the supermarkets versus the small stores, some of that is limitations of data in the way that the report's presented. It's quite hard to capture small stores that are not registered under food retail. And we have some initiatives working with students in the city to map local food systems, where they go out and they map all of the food retail that's available, and they mirror that against some food diaries. And part of that is also looking at the price and availability of different types of food. So there are some very granular initiatives that we're doing to really understand food on our high streets in more detail. But also we're working with the retail sector to look at how we make the offer healthier. This is not about banning cake. It is about celebrating the diversity of food and ensuring that on the menus and the options, there are healthy, affordable options that everyone has access to. And I'm delighted, as part of the work leading into the Commonwealth Games, we are collaborating on a conference for food businesses, which will happen just alongside the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games, bringing together small businesses working in the food industry to talk about how we make a healthy and ethical food economy in Birmingham and how that learning can be shared across the Commonwealth. We also launched the Cook the Commonwealth initiative to capture recipes from our local communities that reflect their Commonwealth heritage in a healthy way, and those are shared through the WIS platform to make them free for everyone to be able to learn how to cook and celebrate our Commonwealth heritage. And finally, we're participating in the Delease conference in Cali in Colombia later this year, where we're supporting a local chef to go and be part of the conversations about how we create healthy food economies through regeneration and economic growth. It's a challenge that all cities across the world are facing, and we are very much at the forefront of trying to navigate that and working with colleagues internationally to understand how to make food healthy and affordable and delicious in every part of our city, not just in the wonderful opportunities we have around Cornwall Road and in the city centre.
Thank you. Can I come back to Councillor O'Shea?
Thank you, Deputy Leader. To follow up on the food waste issue, this is very much a live issue within the service. We will work within the Environment Act, and we will look to support from government, which they have promised, to enable us to further transform and improve the service, and to bring in food waste collections as and when funding allows. I should say we do need their guidance in terms of the legislation, because how that pans out will inform what and how we buy vehicles. So there's a fair bit of work to do before we can get to that phase, but it's very much a live issue with us. Certainly ambition to bring it in.
Thank you. Anybody else for anything on this? No? I think it's a hugely exciting piece of work. I'm very much look forward to seeing what comes out of the consultation. In that case, we have in front of us recommendation 2.1. Is that agreed? Yeah, cool. Thank you. Okay, back to me again, I'm afraid. I promise they're not all me. Next up, we've got the Early Intervention and Prevention High-Level Target Operating Model. Again, this is a hugely ambitious piece of work, bringing together a number of early intervention and prevention services across the council, orientating them to best deliver for our citizens, and making sure we are using all the tools in our council box to help people as soon as we can to prevent issues escalating, and to save both a lot of grief in their own lives, but also money to the council that can be spent on other things. It's a core part of our corporate delivery plan, 22 to 26, as well as our levelling up strategy, and is formed part of the pitch we've put to government on that as well. It is ambitious, so it does mean reorientating some services. It does mean long-term moving towards a different way of working, but it is the right thing to do for our citizens, I believe, and it is the direction of travel a number of other councils are moving in. Graham, can I ask if you want to add anything at this stage?
No, that's fine, Deputy Leader. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. In that case, does anybody have any questions on this? Councillor Alden.
Thank you very much. And you've given it a bit of an introduction there that does pick up the potential there is if this is done right. So it is a key piece of work. It's obviously something that's being done elsewhere, so this isn't particularly new. I mean, Wigan particularly done a lot of work on it. So I guess my question focus around is around the cost, and have we got a comparison of how the cost we're proposing in here compares with other councils that have done that? Obviously our cost will be larger, we're bigger, but as a ratio, is it in line, or are we out of kilter either to the benefit or to an additional cost? So if there's some guidance to be given around that. And then the other part of it is obviously, as we go through this, and the report seems to suggest either a new service or a new directorate being created, one of the key things is we need to make sure that we don't just end up creating a new silo. We know in the council that there's been a long-running issue with sort of silo mentality, and too often departments not doing it because it's another department's issue. That's clearly got to change. The culture is the biggest thing that's got to change across the organisation. What we don't want to do is just end up embedding something else that becomes a silo, preventing that cultural change across the organisation. I think it is that culture more than the physical structure that the thing that's got to change the most. So just with that caveat, if you like, of I hope that's taken on board as the work progresses.
All good points. Any other comments? No? Graham, can I turn to you?
Yep, certainly, Deputy Leader, in answer to Councillor Alden's questions. In my experience, the costs that we've laid out are in line with those in other authorities that I'm familiar with. If Councillor Alden wants further detail, we can provide that. But I mean, just off the top of my head, I would say it's in line. So I'm not worried about that. And I think the point about silos and so on is absolutely right. I think we're acutely aware of that. The worst thing we can do is, break down one group of silos and then create another. So what we're proposing to do as part of this programme is to establish a culture change programme, because we recognise we all need to do things differently. That's every member of staff that's going to be involved in this, way we face our customers, the way we work with each other. We do need to change it. So there will be a culture change programme to support the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing any more hands. Again, huge piece of work, and we will see more of this at future meetings. We've got in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.7. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. You'll be relieved to know it's somebody else now. Section 75 agreements, pooled aligned budget arrangements 21 to 22. Tristan.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. So this is a fairly standard report that seeks to renew the three integrated commissioning arrangements we have here in Birmingham for forthcoming financial year. So those are Better Care Fund, Learning Disability and Mental Health. The sums of money involved are 91 million for the Better Care Fund, 114 million for Learning Disability and 16.8 million for the mental health area. Essentially, this simply authorises the Director of Adult Social Care to conclude negotiations with CCG in respect of funding approved under paragraph 2.1.1 and the three section 75 arrangements that fit with that. So I think it's fairly straightforward explanation and fairly standard report.
Oh, let's see. Any questions? No, you're right. Lovely. Cool.
One more try, Tristan.
So we've got in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.1.3. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. Right, item 12, Building Birmingham, Kings Norton Extension, Primrose 2. Councillor Hussain, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval for business case and procurement strategy to build a total of 82 new homes, 58 council rent and 24 for sale and mixed house sales and flats. There are 36 flats, 1 and 2 beds and 52 homes with 2, 3, 4 and 5 beds, 70% council rent and 30% for sale. The properties will be supported the City Climate Exchange agenda with phase 2 building properties without the use of gas and inclusion of air source heat pumps. In Cabinet 2015, it was approved phases 1A and 1B in Kings Norton scheme. This included a development of 259 properties with 50% council rent and 50% sale. Approval was also secured for the provision of a supermarket and a new park. All council properties in the phase have now been completed, including a 12 sale property, which will be completed by the end of 2022. The contractors are building 22 apartments for stage housing registered providers to be completed by April 2022. Following procurement, a smaller than anticipated supermarket was developed with the approval of planning. The parcel of land remaining as a consequence is now to be developed for housing. The report seeks approval for further phase of housing on this site and cleared land at Follier Road. The provision and installation of the park will start this year, including a new play, gym equipment and new planting. Board councillors have been consulted on the plans and supportive. Residents living nearby the site has been advised of the next phase. They will be able to send any comments through the planning process. A small number of flats are included in this phase. There is a line with housing needs that are required by planning. An on-site supermarket plan is requested to build flats to match the ones already built. The number of houses to be built has a financial unviable, so flats were introduced. There remains to be a need for 1 and 2 bed flats in this area. While not detailed in this report, high-rise flats are being demolished in Pool Farm and Druids Heath, and tenants from those areas may wish to stay locally. The provisions will be support rehousing. The local housing manager considers there will be no issue in these flats being let out. So that's the gist of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or queries? Yes, Councillor Mackie.
Thank you. I was interested to see there's 2 properties there being built using air source and heat pumps, and obviously not connected to some more standard sort of fossil fuels, etc. And if this is in the report, apologies, I must have missed it. But I was just wondering if there's any plans just to monitor how those two houses with the more progressive form of heating perform as compared to the others with their traditional form, and see if there's any comparisons are being made to see if this is something that could be rolled out across the council stock.
But I'm not sure who's, yeah.
We're not monitoring it on Kings Milton's, largely Western Lane. But we monitor.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And that's the same setup there, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from anybody? No? Okay, then we've got in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.9. Are those agreed? Thank you. Item 13, sale of freehold land at Redfern Road, Tyseley, Birmingham, B11 2AB. Councillor O'Shea, over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. This enables the disposal of the current Redfern Road site, which we'll use for refuse collection, and will provide funding to support the development of the new Atlas site around the corner as a purpose-built modern site to enable us to operate refuse collection, street cleansing, and our garage services, combining both Redfern and Montague Street on a single site. The relocation plan was approved at Cabinet in October 2021, and the proposal is to be a solar sale to Homes England, and will enable them to relocate another business close to the Montague site to this Redfern Road site. I recommend 2.1, 2.2 to the Cabinet.
Thank you. Any comments or queries? No? Okay. Then we've got in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.6. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. It now says 10-minute comfort break, but because we are running drastically ahead of time.
So there's a theme here when you're chairing, Richard, I know.
Should I keep you? That's what you're doing after me, anyway, isn't it?
Dangerously close to treason. Let's move on. I will take the comfort break if needed later in the agenda, if that's okay, depending on how time goes. Right, so that takes us straight on then to item 15, A457, Dudley Road Revised Main Scheme Full Business Case. Councillor
Item 14.
14.
Huh. Interesting. Yes. Fine, let's do item 14 then.
That's how we're getting through it so quickly. Which other one?
You all spoke too soon, didn't you?
Which will take no more than a couple of hours.
Councillor O'Shea, do you want to talk about the revised full business case? Tender strategy for Ward End Park Lakeside Renewal and Dolphin Centre project.
Yes, hopefully very briefly. In March 2020, we approved a package of building and landscaping works to Ward End Park, valuing almost £2.5 million. We awarded the landscape contract in January this year. We're now seeking approval to take forward and procure the building works for the Dolphin Centre. That's the former TS Dolphin itself. It will refit the existing building, make it sustainable with energy efficient and green energy technology, make it accessible, provide a community space, job opportunities, and support for young people to get into work. I asked the Cabinet to approve items 2.1 to 2.6.
Okay. Anyone got anything on this one? Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. If I may, I was reading this report with interest. It's always interesting when reports are tabled in late March for projects in individual neighbourhoods. It's incredibly complex, the funding of this scheme, and on page 413, I've just got a question here because it refers to there having been originally a proposed contribution from HS2 of in-kind works, 330,000, plus another 165,000 levered in from the RDF, which is about £500,000. And that apparently is omitted from the revised scheme, is not being used, and a sum of 200,000 has been found from elsewhere. How come the opportunity of significant funding from high-speed rail has been passed up?
I don't believe it's passed up. As I recall, it was found not to be eligible. Rob, any comment to that after that?
You're absolutely right, Cabinet Member. It wasn't eligible to receive that money as part of the overall scheme.
Believe me, we don't pass that money.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep. No more comments or queries on that then? No. Okay, in that case, recommendations 2.1 to 2.6 are in front of us. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, in that case, we're now on to item 15, A457 Dudley Road revised main schedule, main scheme for business case. Councillor Zaffer, over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Report seeks approval of the revised FBC at a total estimated cost of £32 million, which is an increase on £2.2 million, which is approved by Cabinet last March actually. 11.5 million has been to develop the scheme. This FBC will release a further £20 million, which is incorporated. The change from last year's funding, the increase of £2.2 million, has been incorporated in the capital funding secured by the Levelling Up Fund. So I ask Cabinet to approve this report.
Thank you. Anyone got anything on this one? Councillor Mackie.
Yeah, just a bit of background on it. I just had a look through it and I noticed that the risk register has a number of items that have no score against it. And I just wondering what the thinking was behind that, because obviously a risk register is obviously what it says on the tin. So why was there no score against those items?
Okay.
Edwards, I think, is on the call.
Do we have Phil Edwards down the line? Phil, are you able to pick up on that one? If you can hear us.
Sorry, Deputy Leader, I'm struggling. Is Paul Simpkins in the room with you, who's the head of service?
Hiding in a corner.
I've been at a rugby game,
Yeah, it's like, if it helps, it's items 2, 3, 4, 7, 11. So I mean, it's the start.
Which is
the start, yeah. And it's sort of caught my. Sometimes I let one go, but when there's that many, I just thought I should ask the question really.
Yeah, I mean, the insufficient funding obviously relates around approval to the scheme from the FBC. So until the FBC is approved, we're obviously not in a position to proceed with the CPO process, and the funding for that obviously comes through from the FBC process. It's probably an oversight, unfortunately, in terms of completing the risk register, but obviously objections to the resulting public inquiry is still potentially out there until we've actually done the CPO process. And back from any DFT sunken costs, obviously, if there is no scheme approved, then obviously we've committed money to get this scheme to a level, so there's a risk potentially that if we don't proceed, that we've got the cost to pay back. That, I think, are the key ones where there's nothing in there, from what I can see.
Okay, does that answer some of that?
But it kind of does, but I just think even if you don't have the answer, there should, as I understand risk registers, it may be different for councils as compared to corporate world, but if you don't have that information, you're relying on someone else, there's still a risk hanging off the back of that. So it may be slight, it may be severe. So there should be something against it, is all I'm saying. That was obviously what we're here for, to look at these things and point them out.
We can take it.
Rather than it actually being.
Deputy Leader, I'll make sure that this is reviewed in the next 7 days and is circulated amongst colleagues around this table.
That sounds sensible. Okay, anybody got anything else on this? No? Okay. So in front of us then we have recommendations 2.1 to 2.16. Are those agreed with Councillor Zaffer's commitment to chase up on the risk register, risk assessment? Thank you. Okay, item 16, Transportation and Highways Capital Programme 22 to 23 to 27 to 28. Programme update. Back to you, Councillor Zaffer.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'll take this report as read, but just very briefly, this is the annual update of the Transport and Highways Capital Programme. Total forecast for the 6-year rolling programme is £331 million, with just under £94 million allocated for the first year. The programme includes allocation of new local network implementation plan capital grant, which is a devolved grant available through the combined authority. That particular grant is estimated to be 6.225 million. The programme aims to support the delivery of the council's key priorities as set out in the council plan, the Birmingham Transport Plan, the 22 Commonwealth Games, ensuring the legacy of the Games live live on to benefit our residents, and the continuation of the Birmingham Route to Zero journey. There's also some allocation through this project to ward members, £10,000 per single member ward and £20,000 per double member ward. Thanks, Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Any comments or queries on this one? Councillor Alden.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up two of the schemes in the programme, in the appendix. One's listed Bristol Road downgrading, and one's listed Chester Road improvements. The Cabinet member just give some details about what those two schemes actually relate to.
Phil, is this one you can give us some details on? Chester Road and...
For that, I think we have Rachel.
Oh, sorry, Rachel.
Chester Road is just retained funding for scheme that was delivered previously by the Plains. Sorry. And what was the other one?
Bristol Road downgrading.
Selly Oak Centre.
Yeah, I think it is.
That's the Selly Oaks.
The wards listed against it are Bourneville and Wheeling. So it's presumably a bit further down the Bristol Road than the Selly Oak Centre. Or was it not? Because Bourneville does technically go up to the centre, doesn't it?
Borders all three, borders.
Yeah.
I'll just round this up. Okay.
Okay, does that answer the question there? Anybody else got anything on this one? No? Okay, so we've got in front of us 2.1 to 2.12. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Zaffa again for Transport and Environment CAS funded programme.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. So the next two reports look at allocating CAS revenue funding towards key council priorities as per the legislation and as per what we've always said. So this particular report looks at the continuation and enhancement of the car-free school street, which has been a very popular initiative, the expansion of the inner Birmingham 20-mile-per-hour zone, development of the next phase of the Birmingham Cycle Revolution, provision of cycles to Birmingham residents, and the expansion of the air quality monitoring programme in Birmingham schools. So 5 projects which total £5.25 million worth of revenue funding. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Zaffa. Anything on this? Councillor Alden and Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. Just wanted to pick up on the issue around the monitoring at schools. Obviously, we raised this at council. I wonder if you might have some more information now about the issue that it appears to only be for 6 months rather than longer term monitoring.
Yeah, Councillor Hunt, should we take yours as well?
Okay, thank you. Can I first of all, as we're declaring interest rigorously today, declare an interest as the owner of a non-compliant vehicle who regularly pays the charge on the clean air zone. And it cheers me up if I know what the money is being spent on.
You want a bike?
Well, I didn't. I'm not paying it today. I can tell you that. Came by bus. Now I'm confused because we've got 2 reports on the clean air zone in this agenda. Got this one and the subsequent one. I'm unclear why they've both been taken separately. The timing's a bit unclear too, because we are in the purdah period. And these appear to be significant spending announcements, which don't appear to be urgent because they remain to be worked out. In general, it's notable that this first report actually allocates just £5.25 million worth of revenue, which is still way below the sum that, according to this report, is being spent on city centre public realm works from the clean air zone. This report says it's £8 million. That doesn't include fountains, obviously, it's paving, as we understand it. So I welcome the direction of travel here in the movement of money from the clean air zone towards these projects around the city, particularly around school safety and school air quality. Very much welcome the direction of travel, but both on this report and the next one, I would say too little, rather late, getting here. And why so late and why so little?
Thank you, Deputy. I'll respond to both the questions. Councillor Alden, as was raised at council, we're fully committed to ensuring that the air quality monitoring stations in all the schools in Birmingham are a long-term thing. It's a key aspiration for us, and we will allocate more resources to this project at the next phase. wanted to get these initially installed. There's no point putting these air quality monitoring stations in for 6 months. So this is a absolute long-term project that we're committed to. In terms of Councillor Hunt's question, we would have loved to have brought these projects forward a lot earlier. There was a bit of uncertainty because of the delay that the pandemic caused the launch of the clean air zone. So this is a phase of the projects that we allocated. There will be more resources that we will be allocating to similar projects that are in line with our transport policies in the near future. We'll bring forward those as soon as possible. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you. And as for the PERDA question, so I'm losing my voice slightly. All the reports have gone through a number of checks with officers before they arrive here, where such things would have been cleared. Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands or questions. So we've got in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.5. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And then back to Councillor's effort for creation of Clean Air Zone Clean Air Fund. Catchy. Over to you.
Very briefly, so this project, this report is allocated £4.1 million of local ward resources. We've always said that we want the benefits of the clean air zone to be felt by every single neighbourhood in the city. We want to get to legally compliant levels as quickly as possible, which we're doing through the introduction of a clean air zone. But in order to get to safe levels in every single neighbourhood, it's important that we allocate resources right across the city. So this is allocating £20,000 per single member ward and £40,000 per two-member ward per annum over a 2-year period. So ultimately £40,000 per single member ward over 2 years and £80,000 per two-member ward to be used on a number of projects which are in line with how the clean air zone resources can be utilised.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. Too little, rather late. Again, I very much welcome the direction of travel, and it reflects what was agreed by council earlier this year in terms of moving resources towards school safety. The sums are still quite small, and the haste with which this report has been brought, you can tell from how short it is, how little detail there is in this report about how this is going to work. And frankly, to invest 40,000 in a ward to make significant difference to school road safety is going to be very, very challenging. There's going to need to be further work and advice and support for wards as to how to use that money effectively. We need to hear about how one of the biggest obstacles is going to be overcome, and that's the issue of school cooperation. Some schools cooperate are fantastic, and I remember Councillor Bridle talking in January about the school in Shard End, I think it is.
Tarcross.
Which was, Tarcross, which was doing terrific work. Some places are fantastic. Others either decline to cooperate or they're passive aggressive, if you like. They pretend cooperation but actually do very little, or they have significant problems because there are multiple schools which need to achieve cooperation. And one of the disappointing things since the January debate is I asked the leader in writing several times how the issue of legislative change was being progressed, and each time I've been battered off with a response which says basically that the executive is not going to progress the issue, that council agree that there needs to be legislative change to achieve cooperation between the partners involved in these projects. So I welcome again the direction of travel, too little, rather late, and in particular, if the sums are going to be so small, then we really need a lot more work to make sure that money is used effectively. And it's not in this report. It doesn't seem to have been thought through very thoroughly at all. You just wonder why the timing of it.
If you want us to increase the sums, do feel free to drive your vehicle into the city centre some more. Anyone else got anything on this? No? Councillor Zaffer, back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I think Councillor Hunt makes a really important point around school cooperation. I think that is really, really important. And there's many schools right across the city who are absolutely keen to work with the local authority, work with local members, work with local school communities. But there are some where we, as you rightly say, somewhere we need to do some more work. And I'm absolutely committed to do that alongside my colleague, Councillor Francis, to see we've got a clear aspiration. We want to ensure that every single street in Birmingham is safe. But if there was a priority of streets in Birmingham that we need to ensure are at the top of that list is streets outside our schools, and we will do everything possible to work with school communities, work with local members to ensure we can do that. This is obviously an important change and progress towards that, ensuring that we've got some resources allocated. And from the money that we've allocated down towards today, from the annual transport programme, which is £20,000 for a double member ward, so £20,000 to Perry Bar Ward, and I think through this it's £20,000 a year, or sorry, £40,000 per annum towards double member wards too. So there's quite a bit of resources that we are allocating to ensure that we can all work together to make our streets safer. But I agree with Councillor Hunt that there needs to be a lot more work done with schools, and as a local authority, I think we can step up and have those conversations through the right channels. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, did you want to come back?
I may, because Councillor Zaffer can be very reasonable sometimes. And could I ask that, because we tabled the questions to the leader following the council resolution, partly because it's multi-directorate departmental, the issue of school cooperation on this. And as I said, the responses were very disappointing. I wonder if the cabinet member maybe would undertake to revisit the resolution that was passed by council and try and drive forward what is needed to secure that cooperation and partnership.
Deputy Leader, our role with schools has obviously evolved over the years, and it's continued to evolve. But that doesn't mean as a local authority that we step away from our responsibility to protect our children right across the city. I'm more than happy to work with Councillor Francis and the leader and members right across this chamber, including yourself, Councillor, to look at that motion and see what we can do moving forward.
Yeah, and since, as Councillor Zaffer has said, the school landscape has evolved drastically over the last 10 years or so. One of the key principles we've always had as a local authority is keep the Birmingham family of schools working together, regardless of the governance structures around individual institutions, and to carry on working in cooperation, even though the law doesn't necessarily mandate it. So there's the legal side of it, but actually there's the human side of it as well, and just keeping those connections going, which has always been really, really important for us as an administration. But we can pick up the rest of that with the leader as well outside of the meeting. Sorry, I am hoping you can all hear me. My voice is genuinely starting to go, which is a nightmare time when you're trying to share a meeting in a giant room at the far end. Has anyone got anything else on this before we go to recommendations? No? Okay. Right, so we've got in front of us then recommendation 2.1 to 2.4. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now come on to item 19. Councillor Thompson will be joining us down the line, but because we are running so far ahead of time, she hasn't joined us yet. So I will again come back to this item, probably under item 24, which is Councillor Thompson's next item on the agenda. So postponing item 19 and item 6, which is also backed up. We are on to holiday activity and food programme plans 22 to 25. Is that Councillor Francis? Over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Okay, the purpose of this report is to provide an overview of the contractual arrangements and achievements of the holiday activity and food programme in 2021. It will also set out the details of the planned procurement activities for the period of May 2022 to March 2025. In summary of the key issues, the contractual arrangements implemented in 2021 to deliver a successful HAP programme in place. The proposed service specification from 2022 onwards, the results of an initial market engagement, procurement options for consideration, procurement approach for approval. So they're the key issues. In terms of next steps and timescales, following Cabinet member approval, officers will proceed with the procurement process, and it's proposed that the tender will be published at the end of March 22 and by the end of May. A new contract will commence by the 6th of June. So I ask Cabinet members to note the achievements of the holiday activity and food programme in 2021. You will be aware that it's very successful piece of work with very high levels of take-up in the city. Further, notes and accepts the grant funding of £8 £5,029,880 from the Department of Education, as well as the future funding outlined in the letter until 2025. And further details of that can be seen in Appendix 5 for the DFE grant determination letter. And finally, Deputy Leader, to approve the procurement strategy and give delegated authority to the Director of Educational Skills in conjunction with the Interim Assistant Director of Procurement or their delegate, the Director of Council Management or their delegate, and the Acting City Solicitor or their delegate to all contracts and any subsequent contract extensions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comments or queries on this one? No. Okay, well, really exciting work and really important. Okay, recommendations 2.1 to 2.4 are before us, so those agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, item 21, staying independent at home policy, widening the use of the disabled facilities grant, I think is Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Oh, right, my voice is going now.
Yeah.
Right, this Cabinet seeks approval to adapt a new policy to provide assistance and support citizens to enable them to remain living independent in their own home. The policy brings together the Council's response in existing legislation and duties into the single policy. Birmingham is one of the few remaining local authorities without a published policy. The policy is intended to provide a clear framework for assistance as well as enabling more flexibility and discretions in the use of disabled grant funding to citizens to support citizens to live independently. The policy is to develop a co-production with citizens and colleagues from across the council, as well as an ongoing dialogue with housing associations and landlords. The project team would like to formally acknowledge the dedication and hard work of those citizens in supporting the development of the policy and providing a better understanding of how this could support citizens to stay independent at home. The policy describes 3 areas of assistance: top-up grant supporting disabled citizens to secure necessary adaptations, which cost more than the maximum 30k allowed under the statutory disabled facility grant, discretionary discharge assistance securing prompt discharge from hospitals of citizens who might, due to accommodation difficulty, otherwise remain in hospital longer than necessary. Independent and safe assistance addressing accommodations difficulties which, if resolved, might lead to avoidable administration to hospital or residential care and have an impact on the ability of citizens to live safely and independent at home. In order to ensure that these services are able to develop and mobilise, there is a phased approach planned for implementation of the policy that to see the top-up grants implemented from 11th of April 22 and the other forms of assistance by 3rd of October 2022. So that's the gist of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or queries? Yes, Councillor Mackie.
Thanks very much. After my reading the report, I think this is, again, another one where a contract is being extended for a further 6 months. We're not going back out to the market on it. And, I think our views are pretty known. To go out to the market, it gives an opportunity to make sure that the suppliers you've got are current and they're competitive, etc. I think it's also a double shame here because some of the contracts that the council handles are huge, and so therefore local SME businesses that it's good for the council to have a relationship with, they can't bid for those. Like PFI, you've got to go for one of those sort of mega corps. Now they do themselves often contract out to local businesses, but as I say, it's better for the council to have the direct relationship with its own SMEs rather than going through a third party. And I just think this is an area that the SMEs could have taken part in. We could go out to local businesses here and the council itself could give them some of this work rather than it just being extended. And I just think that would have been a double win, supporting local businesses. I think it's just something that I'd like to see doing, and just a shame the contracts being extended without any form of testing being put against the market. But thanks very much, Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Alden.
Thank you. Looking at this report, there's a number of these extensions or new contracts, the extensions, do appear to be beyond 50% of the original contract size. Obviously, would be a violation of the public contract regulations. I wonder if there's any comments could be said around that. And then on 7.4.6, the key safes, This item picks up that, because obviously it's been procured outside or been extended the contract without a proper procurement twice before, now it's the third time, I think. But it says when we previously, or when the council previously tried to procure it in March 2020, unsuccessful due to a lack of quality responses from the market, is the word in the report. Does that mean that the existing provider that's then been extended twice before, now a third time, didn't apply at that point, or did apply, but it was judged not to be a quality response from the market? Get some clarity around that, please.
Thank you. Graham, can I bring you in?
I can certainly answer some of those questions, Deputy Leader. I mean, we are intending to go out to the market. That is clearly the intention. But what we're trying to do is we recognise that contracts require extending in order to ensure service delivery, while work on a commissioning and procurement process is developed for an integrated service model that can be implemented from 1st of July next year. So it's taken a short-term step to enable us to do a better contracting approach for the whole of the service. So that's the intention. And everything else flows from that. If there are issues of quality, we've had to address them in the short term. But it would seem better to make a short extension so we can then do the whole programme in July 2023.
Okay. That picked that up for you.
It doesn't pick up the first point I raised about contract size and public contract regulations.
As far as
There is 7.4.13 states there will be a VEET notice issued, which I think is the step taken to mitigate that risk, as we have discussed at length in previous occasions.
We're happy to put it all in the right order, the way it's been progressed.
I am guided by the procurement service and those working with the service and thinking of that assurance. But obviously,
all the processes.
That's a yes then. Right. Anyone else got anything else on this report? No. Okay. So we've got in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.2. Are those agreed? Thank you. Right, item 22 then is payment of energy grants, government council tax, £150 rebate. With the notice that everybody in the room lives in a house, presumably in Birmingham, and
at one time we all did.
So with the declarations of interest noted at the beginning, in that many of us live in homes that will benefit directly from this, and some may be under the discretionary scheme. With that noted, we have in front of us a paper looking at how we are paying out the £150 rebate to eligible households. It covers all of those living in council tax bands A to D. There's a one-off energy repayment of £150. We are explicitly not allowed to knock that off council tax bills unless that is as a last resort. It has to be paid directly to people. And what we are proposing to do is to pay that direct to the 50% of people that we hold a bank account detail for, which is those that are on direct debit. We aim to pay those as quickly as possible. When it comes to the half of the city that does not pay by direct debit, we will obviously be asking people to sign up for direct debit, because that is easier for everybody all round, saves us a lot of money, saves people a lot of hassle, and means we can get this out as quickly as possible. Failing that, they can sign up online with their bank details. Failing that, we will be looking at paying through an intermediary such as the post office. And as an extreme last resort, we will be crediting the money to their council tax account. But as the government has made it clear, that's not the first option they want us to take. They want the money paid out. So the recommendations in front of us are to accept the money, to accept how we're paying it, and then to delegate a discretionary scheme looking at bands E+. It should be noted 92%, I think, of the city fall into council tax bands A through to D and will benefit from this directly. But there will be a small discretionary scheme for those in hardship living in E+. Any comments or queries on this one? Councillor Mackie.
Yeah, I was just going to ask when the discretionary scheme will be sort of announced. I appreciate you working on it. But because most properties, I think, as you say, 92% of properties are covered A to D. 24,000 properties will be covered by the discretionary scheme. So I think that only leaves about 20,000 properties that aren't covered by the scheme if everyone was to claim. But that would depend on, if you don't want to return the money to the government, it depends when you're then going to on the discretionary rules, if that's the correct term. I'm struggling with the phrase there. But I was just wondering when you would have that worked out. If there was, you're presumably working on it now.
Yeah, we are working on it now. So ideally, we want, as far as the rules permit, we want every penny of this in the pockets of Birmingham people. Peter, did you want to come in?
So we're hoping April. The discretionary scheme, we've had further clarification that suggests that it's not necessarily just targeted for a specific council tax band. So it could be someone who is in A to D, but if they've got exceptional hardship issues, then we can provide some additional support for them. So it's not just restricted to the E.
Yeah, I welcome that totally. So technically speaking, someone could claim £300. Is that what you're saying?
No, they can get the 150. That's the mandatory amount per household, obviously in the ways that, depending on how we got their bank account details. They then have to apply for a separate, and that will have to be tested, as I understand it, and that's what we've got the design about, that discretionary element. So they could get more, but it would have to be on hardship grounds, basically.
Okay. Right, no more hands then. So in front of us, we've got recommendations 2.1 to 2.13. Are those agreed? Okay. We are whizzing through these today. So item 23 is additional capital funding and contract award replacement of 200-metre indoor athletics track for Arena Birmingham. Councillor Chatfield.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. This follows on from a previous report dated 9th of February around the replacement, 9th of February last year, around the replacement of the indoor track. Unfortunately, due to price inflation, I think we're all aware of the situation going on at the moment. And as going out to the market has shown that there is a need for an increased funding allocation for this project. And therefore, this report is requesting permission to spend an additional 590,000 in addition to what was already agreed under the previous report. But obviously, it's very important we have athletics and track. Sure, the leader was here. He'll explain how wonderful it is that we hold major athletics events in the city and how fantastic it is the reputation of the city and for local businesses in the economy to thrive off the back of our reputation for holding major sporting events.
What's that?
I'm sure the leader would indeed concur with that. Any comments or queries? Yeah, Councillor Mackey.
Well, I wasn't going to, but Tristan's nicely sort of tempted me to comment on this one. Because obviously extra funding, I take what he says about inflation, but this is 49% over the original costs. So I think it's a bit more than inflation going on here. I was just wondering how it's so far out. Having mentioned it, I thought I'll ask because that's quite a big chunk of cash. And also looking at it, just linking back to the other items thing, I noticed it, I may as well mention it while I'm speaking now. There's no risk register attached to this, bearing in mind it's asking for a 49% increase. I'd be quite interested to know how robust that 49% is, or would there be another item coming back here at a future date? I appreciate that's not what you want. Thanks very much, Bridget.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Rob, did you want to come in?
Certainly, and the increase is not only due to inflation, it's also due to the fact that the original tenders did not meet the technical specification as required. I think you'll see in the report that the existing track is 29 years old. And if this replacement lasts as long as that, then I think we're very well served with that specification and that new track that is desperately required. As Councillor Chatfield says, it does bring the opportunity to hold major events in Birmingham, and that will benefit the city. If you need any further details, I can obviously provide that.
Should there be a risk register attached to this? I would have thought there should be, shouldn't
Changing the full business case that went to the
Yeah.
report.
No longer valid.
Well, yeah, but I just meaning it's changed a bit, isn't it? Anyway, I just.
Certainly review the original risk register and let you know if there's any changes.
Thank you. And just picking up that point about obviously the issues within the original tender document that council did. So where is that being picked up? As in, what lessons are going to be learned from that to ensure that future procurements don't pick up whatever mistakes were made on this time that led to a cost being 49% out?
Yeah, it was just the fact that the tenderers did not meet the specification. It's a high level spec and they just didn't meet it.
So the spec we put out was okay, it's just the responses.
The responses did not meet that specification.
The council based the cost on those tenders.
Yeah, we didn't increase the spec. We had sent the spec out that the tenderers returned did not meet that specification.
Okay. So everything covered. Tristan, did you want to come back at all?
No, I think it's been covered up.
Okay. If the leader were here, you're quite right. He would be extolling the virtues of this for the economy of the city.
That's why I didn't dial in specially for this item.
He's otherwise engaged, I'm afraid. But we have in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.5. Are those agreed? Thank you. Okay, right. Now I'm going to play around with the agenda. So Councillor Thompson has joined us down the line, which means we're going to take now items 6, 19 and 24. I have been passed a note. I just need to read from the City Solicitor, just to say that Councillor Johnson is joining us online for these items. And for clarity, in order to vote on decisions or recommendations, a member of the committee must be physically present, not our rules, but the government's. Similarly, in order to be counted towards the quorum of meeting, members of the committee must be physically in attendance. So Councillor Thompson will not be formally in attendance at this meeting, but will be contributing online, and will not be listed in attendance via CMIS, but will be presenting the reports and available for questions and so on. I hope that's clear for everybody. Yeah. Right, Councillor Thompson, good to see you. We'll take item 6 first, if that's okay, which is accommodation for the Children's Trust, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Bridget. So this report is for, as Councillor Jones said, is for Birmingham's Children's Trust accommodation. And it's just want to highlight that the Trust looks after 2,000 children and young people in care on behalf of the City Council. And children in care are placed either in foster care, residential care, or with families and friends. We want to make sure that we provide the best possible accommodation for our young people, and one that is good value for money for the city, so that we can make sure that we looked after them in the best possible way with the resources that we have. And the proposal that we have in front of you is for a new service will provide high quality care and good value for money, which we think is absolutely essential for our young people. So I'm going to assume that everybody has read the report, but I just do want to point out also that this will develop some additional new residential provision registered with Ofsted, which will enable the Trust to care for a group of children and young people in care close to home in partnership with the NHS, so that young people's mental health needs are effectively addressed by local services. And I think that's really important that we just highlight the fact that this isn't just about providing accommodation. This is actually making sure that we are working solid in partnership with our colleagues in the health profession. So Councillor Jones, I'm going to assume, like I said, that this has been read by everybody, and I'm asking Cabinet to approve the recommendations, which includes capital investment into this property. It will be a programme that's made up of a 5-year rolling programme for maintenance, major works, capital investment on the new accommodation, resourcing and other areas. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to take those.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any questions? Councillor Mackie. Over to
comment, Sharon, so you're fine. But this is an opportunity I thought just to congratulate the Trust on the work that it's done 2018. took out a service contract 5 + 5 years. And I think it's an area that had its challenges, shall we say. And I think since the trust has come into existence, as corporate parents, I think we all want to see our children having the best support that they can get. And I think the trust has given them that stability. So we're very much in favour of it. I congratulate the work that they've done, and I look forward to them doing their work going forward and supporting the vulnerable children of the city. Thank you very much, Bridget.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Councillor Thompson, anything further?
No, just to say I welcome Councillor Mackey's comments, and also the fact that he's mentioned the fact that we are corporate parents. So I'm going to push back the challenge to all of the members in the room and just remind you all that you have got responsibilities. And if there's anything that you can do with your skill base or anything else that will support our young people in care, then that will be most appreciated, because the trust are doing fantastic work. The council is doing some really good work, and us as corporate parents need to also play our part.
Seconded. Thank you. Right, that's all the hands in the room. So we've got in front of us recommendations 2.1 to 2.4. Are those agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, right. Now we're going to take which is back to Councillor Thompson.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Jones, I completely didn't hear anything you just said. That can you just repeat?
No worries. So it's item 19, complete review of the housing allocations policy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I would have read you the wrong one. Okay, so this is just to say that we are reviewing the housing allocations policy to make it as fit for purpose as possible for the citizens of the city, but also taking into consideration some of the challenges that we've seen over recent years, particularly with homelessness, making sure that we are providing the best allocation service for people ex-care leavers, and also considering those people who have exhausted the housing right to bid, they failed to bid, or they've exhausted and not accepted properties on more than three occasions, but we're still going to create a new banding, which is called Band D, for those people, so that they don't lose the length of time that they've been on the waiting list, and that is particularly for those who may later on their circumstances might change. We're awarding higher priority within the scheme to households who are homeless and owed the main homelessness duty, or are threatened with homelessness in temporary accommodation. And I guess everybody knows why we need to do that. We're also seeking to disqualify all homeowners from the allocations of social housing, except for those that are in exceptional circumstances, and that might be through a need of emergency, whether that's because of issues such as being a victim of domestic abuse. And we are seeking to increase the qualification criteria for local connection for the city from 12 months to 2 years. So those are some of the highlights from within the report. It has been there has been a proper consultation, but also there has been some focus groups that have taken place with young people that have come out of care, people that have young people who have been homeless. We've spoken to foster carers, a whole range of people, as well as the normal routes of consultation. So I ask Cabinet if they would just approve the items, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Got Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, and I think it's some reasonable changes there, and of course we know it's reshuffling the deck chairs, isn't it, to the extent of actually having adequate housing available for people on the list is a real challenge. I just wanted to ask about the so-called right to return, which is sort of in this now with a higher priority within the scheme to all households living in a regeneration area and subject to a compulsory purchase order. So that is a nod towards, I think, the issues that have come out of regeneration projects, where people feel that they're being moved not just from their homes but from their communities without the option of returning to them. But could the Cabinet member possibly tell us whether the higher priority will actually make a significant difference for people in these circumstances actually getting a property back in the community from which they have had to leave.
Okay. Is there any more questions, or was that just? Sorry, I can't
I'm
see.
not seeing any. Just doing a double check.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Hunt.
No, I'm
Thank
not
you very
seeing any.
much. Thank you very much for that question, Councillor Hunt. And you are right, we have included this in here because of the lessons that we've learnt along the way. And actually, it was only a few years ago that the right to the right to return policy came into place following on some work that took place in Drew's Heath. So we needed to make sure that this was included within the policy area. The specifics of your question about the effect that that's going to make, I think that's a little bit more operational. So I will pass over to Hayley or Julie just to answer that question.
Thank you. I think Hayley's best placed to answer that. Thank you.
Okay, yes, no problem. Yeah, with the CPOs, in the current policy, there are 2 levels. So dependent upon when the property is required for the regeneration, an applicant can either be awarded the highest band, band 1, or the lowest band, band 2. What we are proposing to do in this policy is to incorporate them all together for fairness and consistency, and to award band A to all those applicants who are subject to CPO. As you quite rightly said, they have the right to return under the right to return policy. Applicants can bid on the new properties that are going to be coming available in their area of choice. We also have in the policy a discretion award. So if we do have, as an example, a particular applicant who requires rehousing is holding up a scheme, or they want a particular property in a particular area, then we can use that discretion within the proposed allocation scheme to make what we call a direct offer of accommodation. So that should cover any incidences where we have that issue.
Okay, does that answer the question?
Thank you. Yeah.
Have we got anything else on this? No. Okay, right. So in front of us, we've got recommendation 2.1. Is that agreed? Thank you. Now, final one for Councillor Thompson, which is item 24, working with the private sector to deliver temporary accommodation solutions.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Jones. So we all know the current pressures across the city and across the country when it comes to family homelessness. You know, we've got a strong desire to reduce the need for bed and breakfast, but also if we can put people in properties in the temporary space, that's more fit for purpose for the family. We have been working with private landlords, and we want to continue to strengthen that relationship moving forward, and that has predominantly been around the private sector leasing arrangements that we've had, which enables us to put families into temporary accommodation through the private rented sector. This has worked quite well, and we want to continue with this sort of work. We had a contract that was expiring in January. So in November, Cabinet approved a new tender process to be undertaken to secure contracts for future provision for up to 10 years and 2,000 units. And this will help us on that journey of moving forward. And just to add, currently there are 1,303 units of private sector lease in properties that's being used in temporary accommodation, and that absolutely helps us to maintain our focus on making sure that we keep people in as close to their local surroundings as possible within the city, and reduce the likelihood of using more and more bed and breakfast provision. The report outlines the mobilisation plan around that, the risks, and I'm taking it that everybody has read that. So happy to take questions.
Hey, are there any questions? Councillor Alden.
Thank you. Obviously, it's a significant amount of money, which gives the council some level of purchasing power, if you like. is the council going to have a zero tolerance on any bad landlords, particularly on any substandard housing that's getting contracted as part of this? And if so, what monitoring processes are going to be to make sure that where a house that's being contracted as part of this is found to be substandard, action will be taken and in a quick manner?
Thank you very much, Councillor Alden, for your question. I can assure you that we're not seeking to get into contracts with bad landlords. The aim is to make sure that we're working with those that we know are to be good landlords and that are tested. I'm going to hand over to Julie to actually answer this question, I think, if that's okay with you, Julie.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I know Gary's in the room as well, so he might wish to come in. The net budget for private sector leasing scheme is actually £2.7 million for these 1,300 units. So it's actually far more cost effective and far better for people to be housed in individual accommodation rather than bed and breakfast accommodation. There is a robust procurement process that we go through, that's all tested, and we ensure that these are good landlords and operating as good landlords, and we will take action against any such landlords that are not operating within the lines of those requirements. And if indeed we do find that they are not operating within our requirements, then they will be removed from the scheme. Not sure, Gary, if you want to add anything?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Julie. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Just to echo those points, actually. I mean, and also to reassure Councillor who asked that question, in terms of a lot of these, the contract that we're proposing obviously is a rollover of many of the providers we're already working with. So we do have trust, full trust in those providers. We've worked with them over the last 3 years. So it makes sense for us to actually sort of continue that work with them, because obviously they do provide good quality and self-contained accommodation, which I think is quite important here in areas where families need to be with their support networks. So just to sort of reassure, as I said, it will be a number of them will be sort of rolling onto the new contract. So we do have that sort of background, we do have that sort of relationship and that rapport with those landlords. So we're quite sort of content that that will be maintained. But as the guys say there, we'll root out, if we do sort of contract any sort of provider that comes on and we find there are issues, we'll be on it straight away.
Thank you. Obviously, taking board of comments, we'd hope there wasn't any in the first place, but does the contract therefore contain a clause to enable us as a council to be able to move you?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Anything else on this one? Not seeing any hands. Okay.
Thank you very much.
So did you want to come back at all?
No, I was just saying thank
fine.
you very much. Thanks a lot, Bridge.
Lovely. No problem. So we've got recommendation 2.1 in front of us. Is that agreed? Okay. Okay, we're back in the room. So item 25 is Birmingham City Council performance and progress against delivery plan during 21-22. You've got the usual roster in front of us. Sorry, quarter 3, I should have said, rather than the full year. It's quarter 3 we're looking at here. So you've got the usual report in front of us. At the moment, we have 61% of our indicators are on blue or green. In terms of direction of travel, we've got 75% that are either heading the right way or are sitting steady. This is the second quarter where we've had performance star chambers kicking in, where we've been able to get under the skin of performance in particular areas, looking in the round of what's in the performance report, what's coming into our complaints process, and any other data that we have, and challenging service areas on performance against those. And we're just entering our second cycle of quarterly performance star chambers on that, which are proving effective. I will leave other cabinet members to comment on their areas if they want to, and open it up to questions. Well, there might be. Let's go, Councillor Hunt, Councillor Mackie.
Thank you. I'll concentrate on a couple of things. Go back to the old, the big problem, which is the missed collections. Which is referred to in here, and I'm just trying to find the actual statistics which are in here, because it shows that the numbers in this report show an increase in the number of resident complaints about missed collections, as has been discussed repeatedly at Cabinet and at City Council. I do not believe those numbers are an accurate reflection of the extent of the problem, and I think by relying solely on resident complaints when whole rounds are being missed repeatedly across the city, but particularly in some parts of the city, it's completely understating the extent of the problem. What is particularly bizarre in this report, however, is the latest explanation for miscollections, which is apparently that is a consequence of home working. It's a result of people leaving their cars on the street so vehicles can't get in, which is a problem in some cul-de-sacs, we know, but doesn't really account for the extent of the problem, and doesn't really account for the fact that crews are mostly out before people go to work anyway, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. So vehicles would be there whether or not people were commuting to work. So the whole level of, is it complacency? I don't know if that's a fair word. The whole level of under-reporting and understating of the problem, and therefore the lack of action in dealing with it is here in this report. There's a second interesting statistic in this report, which I haven't spotted before, which is the percentage of successful prosecutions, and which I think is 100% across all departments and all enforcement licensing departments. Now, again, that's a confounding statistic because, okay, we want prosecutions to be successful, but if that is your main metric in terms of enforcement and decisions to take prosecutions, it just creates risk aversion, which myself and many colleagues have complained about, a lack of willingness to see through enforcement actions, because you have to meet the metric to have a successful prosecution. So there's no risk taking, and therefore, there's no risk taking, and therefore not enough enforcement takes place, and too many things are let slip because somebody is scared it won't be a successful prosecution.
Okay, Councillor Mackie.
Yes, first of all, DLOA, to echo what John was saying there. I think anyone who lives in the city and experiences the waste collection would know that some of those figures of success rate, inverted commas, doesn't really bear up to sort of experience. I think that as far as this goes, we're talking about the sort of satisfaction, etc., of people going to the contact centre. I noticed that for waste itself, it falls to 36%. So that's not so much people's vote of confidence in the collection of their waste. It's the response to it. And I just had one the other week, which I thought makes the example of both the points quite well, because a number of residents coming in through the day, so the whole estate had been missed, and they were quoting sort of reference numbers at me. I got onto the depot and they didn't realise the route had been dropped. They didn't know that it hadn't been collected. They felt that was it, so they got a crew out on Saturday to come and clear the estate. Now, the difficulty with that, of course, is that our normal collection time is on Tuesday. So, I mean, those waste had sat out there for the bulk of the week, and the depot were unaware. Now, these things happen, but you could imagine you would be disappointed if you're a resident who responded that. You've got your reference number, thinking that the council's on it, and then I just drop an email and I get told that they weren't aware. I mean, 10 out of 10 at the depot, they got straight on it as soon as they know, because I mean, the officers there are dedicated. I took it when John was. Obviously, John mentioned complaints, and I know the point he was making, but I think we all know the crews and the depots, etc., are not complacent. But they just need to, they jumped on it. But it's just these sort of things as to why that number of 36%, that's a flag, isn't it? Time with that. The other item I was going to mention was DL13 on the data breaches. It shows 44 across the first 3 quarters. I think the wording it says is that most of them have had little or no significance or consequences is what it's done. I don't expect the detail of that to be given here, but if someone could give me a briefing on that, just so I know what those are, that would be really helpful. And the question I was going to ask that sort of came to my mind when I read that was that of the individuals whose data have been breached, whatever sort of in whatever way, even if small, were they informed that their data had been released? Thanks very much, Bridget. That's my points.
Thank you. Right, I can come back on the data one to begin with if you like. I don't know if Peter wants to add anything, but always happy to give you a full briefing on it. There is a code for when different data breaches are reported to various levels. and it's based on, it's outside of the council, but it's based on, level of risk, harm done, and so on. So I think it'll depend on the individual breach and what's happened there. But as reported before, we have been rigorous in putting staff through data protection training, data handling training, and we just need to keep cycling around that and making sure as many people, well, everybody is keeping that training up to date on it, and that we are learning lessons where they happen. But very happy to talk further outside about the specifics on that. Yeah.
Just on the data breach, I think what gets to me, I don't think from my experience of this, and of course there's 44 here, so I don't know about them, but I don't think we've ever told anyone that the data's been released. Now that may not be true, but just in my time doing this role, I should probably say, because that's been 4 years, I think.
Yeah, so we have. I think there's been some quite high-profile ones where that has been the case. But as I say, there's a framework depending on the nature of the breach and the harm done, whereby or the risk somebody is put by which we would or wouldn't tell them, because it'd be hugely onerous and not a lot of need to tell them about various ones. But others, obviously, that is vitally important. So there's definitely been cases where that's happened, and I'm pretty sure in the public domain. But again, very happy to get you a briefing on the specifics of that. Councillor O'Shea, I think the rest are for you.
Unusually so. Firstly, Councillor Hunt, I reject absolutely your suggestion there's any complacency anywhere in the service about the performance. That does not apply with the crews on the ground, with the management of the service, senior management, or at cabinet level. It is a top priority for us to get this service back and functioning properly. You mentioned about cars. That has certainly been a problem, and noticeably throughout the pandemic. We had an increased number of access issues. Our crews are not solely out at 5 a.m. They're out till significantly later in the morning, and cars are remaining in place on a number of locations. Not a huge number, but it is a noticeable increase, where we would normally be able to get vehicles down the road. That will in future require us to look at actually procuring different and more manoeuvrable vehicles to cope with our modern city. So that will take some while to proceed. We have been through the measurement process and looking at how we calculate miscollections. As I keep saying, it is in line with other local authorities, and we want to provide an indication of trend rather than necessarily a specific number as to the performance of the service. As I say, it is not about complacency. It's not about trying to hide the problem. We are well aware of the issues, and we're working very hard to resolve them. Similar note for Councillor Mackie. I'm very surprised the depot weren't aware that a round had been dropped, because that's something that they monitor first thing in the morning, and they are aware what does and does not go out. If you can provide details of where that was, I'll ask Rob to follow that up with the depot management staff, because they are certainly aware of that first thing in the morning. And finally, on prosecutions, if you look at the national performance on prosecutions, it is extremely high. I think genuinely it is in the 90s to 100% for every authority in the country. I would certainly welcome us being perhaps a little less risk averse as an authority, and we're working on that. But I think we should also note and celebrate the performance of the service in recovering tens of thousands of pounds in fines and fixed point notices from offenders across and indeed outside the city. We are cracking down on fly tipping. We will carry on doing so, and we want to make Birmingham an unpleasant place for fly tippers to come. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Did you want to come back?
Yeah, I'll just come back on the waste thing. I don't really want to get anyone into trouble per se, because the depot came straight back to me. They did their own investigation and told me why it was Harvest Fields, Grosvenor Close, Row Allen, Essex Road, Strather Road, and a load of others. And they explained to me why it happened. It was more just, I was more the contact centre. I mean, they say it won't happen again because they found out why. But it was more that the residents did what they're supposed to do. They got on to they got their numbers. They complained about it, but that still didn't make it to the depot, because if the people at the call centre had passed that on to the depot, they would have known.
But that's a matter that's you raised, Deputy Leader.
Yeah, I wasn't
earlier. So the issue with the depot should be aware what has been dropped intentionally across the day. If that is not the case, then please do.
Just bung us the details over to both of us, so I get it looked into. Right. Don't think there's anything for any other cabinet members here. Anybody else got anything on this? No? Okay. So in front of us, we've got recommendation 2.1. Is that agreed? Okay. Okay. Item 26, catering and food procurement strategy for civic catering even / city serve. Councillor Chatfield.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. This is a relates to procurement matter. There is a significant amount of background and history to this, not least because the arrangements used to be done through a third party, Pelican Procurement, who used to provide much of the procurement service for City Serve, which is our city food school meals service. Obviously, there's been a significant period of disruption in the food market, and there's been some issues with that procurement process at City Serve. So effectively, this is a request to allow us to extend some of those contracts as necessary in order for us to put a proper strategy in place for a whole approach, a holistic approach to food procurement across the organisation. And there's a timetable set out under 3.1.2 that outlines how we move forward to this point to then be in a position next year where we have by July 2022, moving into contract for 2023, where we then have a proper procurement process in place for all of our food contracts. It is a complex. I hope the complexity of that background is laid out nicely in the report, but if there are questions, I'm happy to take them.
Are there questions? Yes, Councillor Alden.
Thank you. So looking at the appendix, it appears, and do correct me if I'm wrong, some of these contracts expired more than 4 years ago. And have just been rolled on. So it raises a number of questions. Firstly, what security do we have around the prices of these contracts being remotely best value? On the other side of the coin, what security do we have if the provider just decides to say, no, the cost is different because we're now no longer doing it within a contract, so we've got no safeguard on the costs going up? And what work is being done within procurement around making sure that things like this are, one, done in a timely manner, and two, then picked up and resolved when they cease to be in a timely manner, rather than being left 4 years?
If I can take those in reverse order, you'll be aware of the appointment of the new AD for procurement, and obviously part of his work has been to conduct a review of the organisation as a whole, procurement service as a whole, and part of that work has been making sure that the structure is in place across the whole of the City Council, regardless of which section, that procurement issues get flagged in good time and dealt with in good time. You know, we've been, for example, this is effectively a part of a tidying up exercise where issues have come to light, and this is part of an exercise in terms of rectifying those. In terms, I can go away and get you more assurance on the process that's been in place up to this point within CCSERV. They had a procurement manager who was performing that function. We have to rely on the professional skills of that procurement manager. Obviously, it's in no one's interest, not least the City Council or City Serve, or the schools in question, for those contracts to be not providing best value. So every effort would have been made to ensure that those are best value. But I can get you further reassurance on that point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackie, did you have a question?
No, Councillor Alden's covered superbly.
Okay, anyone else got anything else on this? No, so with those explanations then, it's recommendations 2.1 to 2.3 in front of us. Are those agreed? Cool, nearly there. Planned procurement activities, April 22 to June 22, back to Councillor Chatfield.
Thank you. This is the standard report, sets out those procurements have been undertaken within officer delegations. And as ever, once my laptop wakes up, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, are there any? No. Oh,
I just had one
okay.
on the bunting, whatever, the dressing for the city. So I'm going to set that page open, whatever the official title of it all is. It's got a start date of the 1st of May. Obviously, it's connected to the Commonwealth Games, which is a date we've known about for 3 years, and yet the procurement for it's coming forward in the middle of March. Well, in fact, actually, it's only putting it as a planned procurement and the procurement to happen between now and the 1st of May. Again, that just seems another pretty poorly timed and managed procurement exercise. That is something that could have been, frankly, sorted a year ago. We knew exactly the dates it was needed for.
So I'm just getting the relevant report.
That's one that falls to the leader.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anyone from the
Happy for you to email the leader and ask him to reply to all councillors.
So I think the answer to this is the spec for what we have in the city has been being designed up until recently. So whilst we knew we would need banners, flags, etc., this spec of exactly what and where has been a moving feast is my understanding of that. But I can make sure that we get you a full answer. I don't know if anyone else in the room has any. No, we can take that away. Okay, no other questions? Okay, right, just recommendation 2.1 in front of us then, is that agreed? Okay, get on to any other urgent business. We actually have 2 bits of urgent business today. The first is 28A, Clinical Commissioning Group Support Funding 21-22 via section 256. How exciting. Councillor Chatfield.
Yes, this is good news to the extent it represents additional funding that has come to Birmingham City Council from the CCG, and this effectively is a fairly straightforward report in order to accept that funding that's come to us via section 256 and outlines our approach to how that funding will be used, both in terms of supporting the service in year and then allowing us to press forward with innovative approaches in future years as well.
Okay, anyone got anything on this? No? Okay. Recommendations 2.1 to 2.3, are those agreed? Yep. Okay, and the final one is appointments. Councillor Hunt, I understand we have a substitution.
If I may, yes. Just to replace Councillor Mike Ward with Councillor Deborah Harris on the East Birmingham Local Partnership Delivery Group.
Lovely. I think that's a notification you need to make, but we don't need to take a decision on it. I'm looking at Christian here for.
You can officially record it.
I think we officially record it, but we don't need to decide it. Yes.
Mike's replaceable.
Okay, so that's noted. Great. So when you're going off script, that's the dangerous thing. Okay. Right. I think we've run out of any other urgent business unless anyone else has any. Councillor Alden.
I mean, it's not really my place to do it, but I think it's common knowledge that Tristan's standing down for the council.
One more meeting, I think.
Is there another cabinet? Oh, well, there you go. You can do it.
You're welcome to do your.
It's been nice about you. I'll say it.
Do it now in case you're busy that day.
Wonderful spoken of Tristan. I wish him all the very best in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
I'm sure we would all echo that.
If he's not here next time, maybe you're going to accuse him of knowing something we didn't.
I'm going to close the meeting before this gets dangerous. Thank you ever so much, everybody. That is a marathon agenda that we have got through in record time. So a real thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, right?